The sun was setting behind the hills, casting long shadows over the dry farmland. Ray stood outside his small wooden house, wiping sweat from his forehead. He had spent the whole day fixing the broken fence. His shirt was dirty, his hands rough, but his eyes still noticed the silence. Too quiet, even for this time of day. Then he saw her. At first, he thought it was just a shape in the distance, maybe an animal, maybe a traveler. But as the figure came closer, his heart began to beat faster. It was a woman, tall and thin, walking slowly like her legs were about to give up. She had strange, purple skin that looked faded under the evening light. Her dress was torn, and dust covered her arms and feet. Ray stepped back, unsure. He had seen aliens before, traders, workers, travelers, but never one like this. She looked like she hadn't eaten in days. He wanted to speak, but before he could say a word, the woman raised her hand weakly and whispered, "Please, marry me." Ray blinked, confused. "Wait, what?" he said, his voice low. The alien woman took 2 more steps and fell to her knees. Her body shook and her head hung low. She didn't ask for food or water, not even a place to sleep. All she said again was, "Please, marry me." Ray ran forward and caught her before she hit the ground. He could feel her bones through her skin. She was burning with fever, her eyes half closed. He didn't know what to do, but his heart said one thing: help her now. He carried her inside. Laying her gently on the old couch, he brought a blanket, some water, and the last of the soup he had made the night before. The alien woman didn't speak at first, but she drank slowly, as if every drop mattered. Ray sat on the floor near her, still trying to understand what just happened. "Why did you say, marry you?" he asked softly. The woman looked at him, her eyes shining in the dim light. They were deep and sad, the kind of eyes that had seen too much. "My name is Ayla," she whispered. "I come from the moon of Valsaran." Her voice was shaky but clear. "My people, they left me behind." Ray didn't say anything. He just listened. "I had no family, no bond," she continued. "In my world, if a woman has no bond, she is sent away. I hid on a cargo ship, slept in crates, came here with nothing. On your planet, a woman who is bonded to a human is safe." Ray's eyes widened. "You mean, if you're married to someone, they can't sell you or harm you?" Ayla nodded slowly. "Please." "I will do anything," she said. "Cook, clean. Stay out of your way. I don't want love, just safety." Ray stood up and walked toward the window. The stars were starting to show in the sky. His thoughts were a storm. This woman had come from across the stars, not for adventure, not for fame, but to survive. And now she was in his house asking for a bond that meant life or death for her. He looked back at her. She was already asleep, curled up under the blanket like a child. The empty bowl lay near her, and her hand held onto the edge of the couch like she was afraid to fall again. Ray sighed and turned off the light as he walked to his room. He couldn't stop thinking about her words. Not love, just safety. But something in her voice had touched something in him. Something he thought was gone, hope maybe, or the need to protect. He lay in bed, staring at the ceiling outside. The wind blew gently across the fields. Inside, a poor alien woman slept for the first time in days. And in the silence of that small house, something had begun. A story that would change both their lives forever. Morning came slowly. Golden light touched the wooden floor of the farmhouse. Birds chirped outside, and a soft wind moved the old curtains. Ray sat at the small kitchen table, drinking coffee, but his eyes stayed fixed on the woman lying on the couch. Ayla hadn't moved much during the night, but her breathing was steady now. Peaceful even. He didn't know what he had just gotten himself into. A stranger, a woman from another world, now asleep in his home. And not just any woman, a desperate one. Asking for marriage. Ray had seen many things in his life. He was a man who lived alone by choice. Far from the cities, he didn't like crowds, didn't like rules, but this felt different. Suddenly Ayla moved, slowly sitting up. She blinked at the light, covering her eyes. Ray stood and stepped forward. Holding a cup of water. "You're safe," he said. His voice calm. She looked at him, unsure for a moment, then nodded. "Thank you," she whispered. Taking the water, there was silence, only broken by the soft creak of the floor. Then she said, "Why didn't you throw me out?" Ray raised an eyebrow. "You fell at my door asking to marry me, then passed out," he said. "What kind of man would throw you out?" Ayla gave a weak smile, but her eyes stayed heavy. "Most would," she replied. "Many have." Ray sat across from her, leaning forward. "Tell me what happened to you," he said gently. Ayla took a long breath, then spoke. "I was born on Valsaran. A moon with silver skies and green deserts, she said. My people lived in small tribes, old traditions. Strict laws. In our culture, a woman must be bonded by her 20th cycle, or she is cast away. Ray frowned. Bonded? Married, claimed, chosen, whatever word fits, she explained. If no one chooses you, you are seen as useless. I was quiet, not strong like the others, not bold. They said I was a waste of food. Ray's hands tightened on his cup. He felt something burn in his chest, not anger at her, but at the cruelty she had faced. Ayla continued, her voice low. They put me on a cart, tied my hands, and left me at the trading post. I waited for days, she said. No one bought me, not even for scraps. Ray looked away for a second. Not knowing what to say, she added, Then one night, I broke free and snuck into a cargo ship heading toward Earth. I hid in a box full of metal parts. I almost died from the cold. She paused, her eyes glistening. When I got here, I walked, begged for food, slept in gutters, and one man tried to take me, she said, her voice shaking. But I ran. Ray was quiet. This woman, thin and alone, had crossed planets, walked for days, and suffered in silence, all for one thing, not money, not power, just safety. Why marriage? He asked finally. You could have asked for help. Ayla shook her head slowly. Because on this planet, a married alien woman cannot be sold, cannot be taken, she whispered. The papers protect her. I asked because I have no one. And I didn't want to die as nothing. Ray leaned back, staring at the wooden ceiling. His heart felt heavy. She wasn't asking for love, she was asking for a shield, a way to survive in a world that saw her as worthless. I don't need you to love me, she said softly. I just need a place to sleep without fear. I will clean, I will cook, I will never disturb your life. Ray stood up. Walking toward the window, the wind had picked up outside. Swaying the trees, he had spent so long alone, pushing people away. But now someone had walked into his life and offered him something strange. Not romance, but trust. He turned back to her. You can stay, he said. But we don't have to rush into anything. Ayla blinked, surprised. I'm not saying yes to marriage, Ray added quickly. But you're not going back out there. A tear slipped from Ayla's eye, but she nodded. Thank you, she said quietly. Truly. Later that evening, Ray showed her the small guest room beside the barn. It was dusty and cold, but she smiled and said it was perfect. She swept the floor, fixed the broken lamp, and folded the old blanket like it was the softest silk. That night, Ray couldn't sleep. He lay in bed staring at the ceiling again, not because of fear, but because a part of him had started to feel something he hadn't felt in years. Purpose. And in the room next door, Ayla hummed softly, a tune from a world far away, full of pain but also hope, a hope that maybe, just maybe, she had found the right door. The next few days passed slowly. Ray kept busy with his usual chores, feeding the animals, fixing the fence, cleaning the tool shed. But something had changed. There was another rhythm in the house now. Soft and careful, Ayla rose early, even before the rooster. She washed the dishes before Ray could even reach the sink. She swept the floors, folded the clothes, and even repaired the curtains using an old sewing needle she had found in a drawer. She never complained, never asked for anything, not even food. When Ray brought her a bowl of stew, she bowed slightly, always whispering, "Thank you." She barely ate half and saved the rest for later. He knew why. She had lived on hunger for too long, and now she was afraid it would return again. Ray watched her from the barn window. She was kneeling beside the small garden bed, pulling weeds with bare hands. The sun hit her skin, and the strange purple glow shimmered under the light. She looked fragile, like glass, but her hands moved with quiet strength that night. Ray finally said what he had been thinking for days. "Ayla, you don't have to work so hard." She looked up from the floor she was cleaning. Her head tilted slightly. "If I don't work, you might send me away," she said. "If I'm useful, maybe you will let me stay." Ray frowned. "I said you could stay and I meant it. But marriage? That's not a small thing." Ayla sat down slowly, crossing her legs. "I understand," she said. "Where I come from, marriage is not about love. It is about survival." Ray sat across from her, arms resting on his knees. "What did you mean that night?" he asked, "when you said you would do anything?" Ayla's eyes dropped to the floor, I meant I would serve you, she said, not like a slave, but like a helper. I can cook, clean, fix things. Watch over your land. I will not bother you. Ray was silent for a moment. He could see that she truly believed this was a fair trade. Her freedom, her work, for a roof and a name. But Ayla, he said slowly, that's not what a wife should be. She should be a partner, not just a worker. Ayla looked at him, confused. In my world, a wife must never argue, she said. She must obey. That's why I was never chosen. Ray stared at her, something inside him tightening. So you were rejected because you had your own thoughts? He asked. She nodded. I used to ask questions, she said. That made the elders angry. Ray shook his head. Here, asking questions is not wrong, he said. In fact, it means you're smart, Ayla smiled faintly. But her eyes were still full of doubt. Even if you don't marry me, she whispered. Let me earn my place here. Let me work. In exchange for safety. Ray looked at her carefully. This wasn't a game and it wasn't romance. It was a deal, a raw, honest deal made between two broken people, one who had given up on company, and one who had no choice but to beg. He stood up, walked to the shelf, and pulled out an old notebook. He placed it on the table between them, then said, We'll write the rules. Ayla blinked. Unsure what he meant. Not marriage, he said. Not yet, but a deal. You help around the farm, he said, and I give you shelter, food, and protection. No one owns anyone and no one gives orders on deal. Ayla's hands trembled as she picked up the pen. She had never seen a human offer fairness like this. Not to her. She wrote her name slowly in her alien script, then added her human name in small letters below. Ayla, Ray smiled and signed beside it. It wasn't love, but it was trust. Later that evening, Ray cooked some eggs and boiled potatoes. He brought out 2 plates and sat with her at the small table. Ayla looked around, unsure. You're allowed to sit, Ray said with a chuckle. This is your home too, remember? She nodded and sat slowly. They ate in silence, but it wasn't awkward. It felt like the beginning of something they didn't have words for yet. After dinner, Ayla stood by the window. Staring at the stars, Ray joined her and asked, Do you miss your planet? Ayla didn't answer right away, then she whispered, No, I miss being wanted. Ray's chest felt tight. He didn't know what to say, so he just stood beside her, not speaking, just standing near. And that night, when Ayla returned to her small room, she smiled for the first time in years. Not because she was married, not because she was loved, but because someone finally treated her like she mattered. The wind moved gently through the fields. The tall grass swayed like waves in the ocean. Ray stood at the edge of the farm, looking toward the hills. Behind him, Ayla knelt in the garden, humming a quiet tune as she pulled out weeds. It had been 10 days since she came into his life. 10 days since she had fallen at his doorstep and changed everything. Ray still didn't understand what was happening inside his own heart. But something was growing, like the seeds Ayla had planted in the dry soil. She had brought life to his house not with words but with small things. She fixed the broken water pipe behind the barn. She stitched up the old couch cushion he had been meaning to throw away. She even repaired his torn coat, leaving a tiny silver thread in the corner like her own signature. She asked for nothing, not even thanks, but every time she looked at him, there was a deep silence in her eyes, like a story waiting to be told. One evening, just as the sky turned orange, Ray lit the small fireplace in the living room. Ayla walked in with 2 cups of tea, her fingers still dirty from working with soil. Ray took a sip and said, You don't have to do everything. She looked at him quietly, then asked, Why do you live so far from everyone else? Ray leaned back thinking, My wife, he said, voice low. She died 5 years ago. She was everything to me. Ayla sat down slowly, placing her hands in her lap. I'm sorry, she whispered. Ray nodded, staring at the fire. I couldn't stay in the city, he said. Too many memories. So I came here, to build something new. But nothing felt right again. Ayla looked at him, her eyes soft. Now, she asked. Ray turned to her and smiled faintly. Now, it feels a little better. That night, as the wind blew outside, they both sat in silence. The flames danced, and their shadows moved across the wall. Neither of them said much, but something shifted between them, not romance. Not yet, but something warmer than silence. The next morning, Ayla stepped outside and paused. The sky was cloudy, the air thick, a storm was coming. She rushed to bring the tools inside, covered the woodpile, and checked the chickens. Ray watched her from the porch, impressed by how she moved, not as a guest, but as someone who belonged by afternoon. The wind had grown stronger. Rain poured down, tapping on the roof like 1,000 tiny drums. Thunder rolled in the distance, shaking the ground inside the house. Ray and Ayla sat by the fireplace again. He handed her a blanket and she wrapped it around herself. Outside, the world felt wild, but in that room it was calm. Ayla stared into the fire, her voice almost too quiet to hear. "I used to sing in the rain," she said. Ray looked at her, surprised. "You?" She nodded. "On my moon, the rain was rare," she said, "but when it came, we danced. My mother used to say, rain was the whisper of life." Ray smiled. "She sounds wise." Ayla's eyes dimmed. "She died during the famine. Too many mouths. Not enough food." Ray placed his cup down and leaned forward. "You don't have to tell me everything now," he said gently. Ayla shook her head. "I want to," she said. "Because you listen." Lightning flashed outside, and for a second her face lit up with the fire and the storm. "I was always told I was too soft," she said. "I didn't fight, didn't yell, didn't chase the strongest mate. They called me useless." Ray leaned back, eyes fixed on her. "You're not useless," he said, voice firm. "You've done more for this place in 10 days than I did in 5 years. Ayla looked down, her cheeks turning slightly blue, the way her species blushed. "No one's ever said that to me," she whispered. The fire crackled between them. Outside, the storm grew stronger, but neither moved. There was safety in that moment, a warmth that had nothing to do with the fire. Suddenly, the door creaked. Ray stood and opened it just a little, peeking out. The wind had knocked over one of the fences. "I'll fix it tomorrow," he muttered. But as he turned back, Ayla stood behind him, her hands holding a towel. She gently wiped the rain off his face, her touch light and careful. Ray froze for a moment. No one had touched him like that in years. It was such a small thing, but it broke something open in him, something cold and hidden. "Thank you," he said, voice rough. Ayla nodded and stepped back. "No," she said softly, "thank you for not treating me like a thing." Later, as they sat near the fire again, Ray whispered something almost lost in the wind. "You're not a servant. Ayla, you're part of this home now." Ayla didn't reply, but that night she sang quietly in her room, a song in her alien tongue, soft and full of sorrow, but also of hope. Ray lay in bed, listening to her voice drift through the walls. The wind outside howled, but he felt peace for the first time in a long while, and in the whisper of that storm, 2 broken souls were starting to heal together. The storm had passed, the sun rose behind the trees, and the land looked fresh as if washed clean. Ray stepped outside, stretching his arms, breathing in the sharp morning air. Ayla stood near the chicken coop, feeding the birds with soft hums under her breath. It felt like a normal day, almost peaceful, but peace doesn't last forever. By noon, Ray noticed something strange, a shadow near the front gate. He walked out and found 2 men standing just beyond the fence. One was tall with a red jacket, the other short and wide, chewing a toothpick. Ray knew them, neighbors from a few miles down. People he rarely saw and never invited. "You got company, Ray?" the tall one asked, squinting toward the house. Ray didn't answer right away. "Depends," he said, keeping his voice steady. "You looking for something?" The short one laughed. "Heard you got yourself an alien girl." "Pretty one, too." Ray's jaw tightened. "I don't talk about my guests," he said. The tall man leaned on the fence. "Ray, we just want to help," he said. "Sometimes these aliens pretend to be harmless. Next thing you know, your place is burned down and your tools are missing." Ray's eyes narrowed. "She's not a thief," he said. "She's helping me fix this place." The men looked at each other and smirked. The short one stepped forward. "Come on, Ray," he said. "She probably offered herself for safety. Everyone knows how they do it. Bond with a human, get protection, then run off when trouble shows up." Ray's hands curled into fists. "She's not like that," he said, his voice sharp. "She's scared. Not dangerous and still," the tall one said. "You sure you want to let her stay? If word gets out, officials might come. Might say you're hiding an illegal." Ray didn't flinch. "I'm not hiding anyone," he said. "She's living with me. With my permission." The men exchanged a glance. "We'll be back," they said, turning to leave. "Don't say we didn't warn you." That night, Ray sat at the table with Ayla. but he barely touched his food. She noticed, of course, what happened. She asked softly. People came, he replied. Said I shouldn't let you stay. Ayla lowered her eyes, her shoulders shrinking. I can leave, she whispered. I don't want to bring danger to you. Ray looked up, his voice quiet but firm. I won't let them scare me. You've done nothing wrong. But I'm still seen as a threat, she said. Even when I only want to survive, he leaned forward, meeting her eyes. I've lived alone a long time, Ayla, he said. And not once in those years has anyone helped me fix this place, smile at me, or make it feel like home again. You did all that without even trying. Ayla didn't speak. Tears shimmered in her eyes, but she held them back. Ray stood up, walked to the drawer, and pulled out a small envelope. Inside it were old government forms, documents for bonding. He placed them on the table and said, If I sign this, no one can take you. Ayla stared at the papers like they were made of fire. You would marry me? Ray didn't say yes, not with words. He slid the paper toward her and held out a pen. Only if you still want this, he said. Not because you're afraid, but because you want to stay. Ayla's hand shook as she picked up the pen. I wanted safety, she whispered, but now I want to belong. To you, to this home, she signed. Then looked up at Ray. His name followed. Strong and certain in the silence that followed. Something shifted between them. No longer a guest and a host. No longer a survivor and a protector. Now bonded in law and in heart outside. A sound broke the moment, footsteps on the gravel. Ray opened the door to find the same two men again, now with a third, an officer. Got word of an illegal staying here, the officer said. Mind if we come in? Ray stepped aside calmly, holding the signed papers in his hand. You don't need to, he said. She's my wife now. The men stared, eyes wide. She signed it, Ray continued. And so did I. She's not illegal, she's protected. Ayla stepped beside him. Silent but strong, the officer read the paper, then nodded slowly. Well, he said, that changes things. The men behind him looked disappointed, even angry, but there was nothing they could do now. The officer tipped his hat and walked away, and the others followed, muttering under their breath. As the door closed, Ayla leaned against it, breathing out slowly. You didn't have to do that, she whispered. Ray looked at her and smiled. I wanted to. That night, no storm raged outside, but something powerful had passed through their lives. Not rain, not wind, but the force of a decision that could not be undone. And for the first time, Ayla felt something she had never truly known. Not fear, not survival, belonging. The sun rose gently over the hills. The fields around Ray's farmhouse glowed with golden light. Inside the house, something had changed. Not just the papers that now sat on the kitchen table, but the silence itself. It no longer felt empty. Ayla moved through the house like she belonged. She swept the porch, hummed as she cooked breakfast, and fed the chickens before Ray even woke up. But her steps were lighter. She no longer walked like she was waiting to be thrown out. Ray stepped out of his room, rubbing the back of his neck. He still wasn't used to waking up to the smell of warm bread and herbs. Morning, he said. Ayla turned with a small smile. Morning, husband, she whispered. Then quickly looked away, shy. Ray paused, not sure how to respond. He hadn't expected to feel anything when he signed the papers. It was supposed to be protection, just legal. But now, hearing that word from her lips, it stirred something inside him. They sat across the table, eating in silence. But it was a new kind of silence, full of meaning. Every glance between them carried unspoken thoughts. Every small smile said more than words could. After breakfast, Ray walked out to check the barn. He found Ayla already there, brushing the old horse with slow, careful hands. The animal stood calmly, even leaning into her touch. She trusts you, Ray said. Leaning on the post, Ayla nodded. She lost her herd too, she said softly. Like me, Ray felt a lump rise in his throat. He looked away, pretending to adjust the gate. She's not alone now, he said. Neither are you. That afternoon, Ray drove into town for supplies. He didn't usually like going into the village, too many stairs, too many questions, but now, with Ayla officially bonded to him, he had to register the paperwork. At the government office, the clerk raised an eyebrow. You're registering an alien marriage? He asked. Ray nodded, sliding the signed forms forward. It's all legal, he said. She lives with me. And we both agreed. The clerk read the documents carefully, then stamped them with a loud thud. Done, he said. But you better be ready for talk. Ray didn't reply. He took the stamped papers and left. As he walked through the town square, he noticed the whispers. A few heads turned, a few sneers showed. Married an alien, huh? Someone muttered under their breath. Must be desperate, said another. Ray kept walking, shoulders straight, face calm. He had lived long enough to know how cruel people could be when they didn't understand something. And he didn't care. Back at the farmhouse, Ayla waited by the gate. When she saw the envelope in his hand, her heart jumped. And did they accept it? She asked. Ray nodded and held up the stamped papers. It's official now, he said. No one can touch you. Ayla stared at the paper as if it were a rare gem. Her hands trembled as she held it. I never thought I would ever be protected again, she whispered. Ray didn't say much. He just looked at her and nodded once. That evening he built a small fire in the yard. They sat outside sharing roasted vegetables and bread. The sky turned dark, stars glowing above them like scattered diamonds. Ayla watched the stars with wide eyes. In my language, she said, we call them eyes of the forgotten. Ray turned to her. Why? Because those who are left behind, she said, can still be seen from above. And sometimes, they shine the brightest. Ray looked at her, really looked. Her face lit by starlight, her voice gentle but strong. He had brought her into his home out of kindness. But now, it felt like fate, Ayla, he said slowly. Do you still think of this as a deal? She turned her head, confused. What do you mean? This marriage, he said, was meant to protect you. But do you feel something more now? Ayla looked down, her fingers gripping the blanket on her lap. At first, she whispered, it was just survival. But now when I see you, when I hear your voice, when you defend me, I feel safe. And when I laugh, I'm not pretending, Ray smiled. I guess we're both learning to live again, he said. Together. That night, as they stood at the doorway, Ayla hesitated. She turned to Ray and said, I know you didn't marry me for love, but if you ever want more than safety, I'll be waiting. She stepped into her room. Leaving the door slightly open, Ray stood there, watching the hallway for a long moment, and for the first time in years, his heart beat not just to survive but to hope. The morning air was quiet. The wind moved gently through the open fields, rustling the long grass with a whisper that carried hope. Ray stepped out onto the porch with a mug of coffee in his hand. For the first time in years, he wasn't just watching the land, he was part of it again. Ayla stood near the garden, her hands buried in the soil. She had planted new seeds 2 days ago, and now she checked them each morning, not because she didn't trust them, but because she believed something good could grow there. Just like in her heart, Ray watched her from a distance. There was something graceful about the way she moved now. She didn't walk like a stranger anymore. She walked like someone who belonged after breakfast. Ray repaired the wooden fence on the north side, while Ayla fixed the barn door that kept creaking in the wind. They didn't talk much while working, but when their eyes met, there was a silent agreement between them. They were no longer just two people under the same roof. They were a pair, two lives once broken. Slowly weaving together later that afternoon, a vehicle approached on the dirt road. Ray wiped his hands and stepped forward. It was a delivery truck with supplies he had ordered last week, but the driver wasn't alone. A tall man in uniform stepped out behind him, a local inspector. Ray tensed, his eyes narrowing as the officer looked around the property. Ray Thompson? The man asked. Ray nodded. You recently registered an interspecies bond. That's right, Ray said calmly. She's my wife. The officer looked toward the house where Ayla now stood in the doorway. She held a cloth in her hand, her eyes wide but steady. The man took a breath, then said, We've received some complaints. Let me guess, Ray said. From neighbors who don't like purple skin. The officer didn't deny it. We just want to ensure everything is consensual, he said. No coercion, no trade, no exploitation. Ray stepped aside. Ask her yourself, he said. She'll tell you. Ayla walked forward slowly, standing beside Ray. She met the officer's eyes and said with a steady voice, I came here on my own. I asked for protection. And this man gave me more than I ever asked for. The officer glanced at his tablet, then back at them. No issues? No, she said, only kindness. The officer looked between the two for a moment, then nodded. Very well, he said. You'll get the final approval papers next week. Until then, Keep your records clear." As the vehicle rolled away down the dusty road, Ray exhaled deeply. Ayla turned to him and smiled. "You didn't hesitate," she said. "I never will," Ray replied. That evening they sat outside again, this time under lantern light. The air smelled of earth and fresh rain. Ray brought out an old radio and played soft music from a time long gone. Ayla listened with wonder. "What is that sound?" Ray smiled. "It's called jazz," he said. "It doesn't follow rules, it just feels." She closed her eyes and swayed gently with the melody. "It sounds like freedom," she whispered. Ray watched her in the glow of the lantern, her face peaceful, and without thinking, he reached out his hand. Ayla looked at it, then took it gently. They sat like that, hand in hand. As the stars slowly filled the sky, "Ayla," Ray said quietly, "I didn't just marry you to protect you. I think I needed you too." She turned to him, her voice soft. "And I didn't just ask for safety. I hoped for love." They didn't say anything more, they didn't need to. The next day, Ayla painted a small wooden sign and placed it near the front gate. It read, "Thompson Farm. 2 hearts. 1 home visitors came by now and then. Some curious, some judgmental. But Ray and Ayla faced them all, together. And little by little the whispers turned to silence, and the silence turned to respect. Months passed, the crops grew strong, and laughter returned to the halls of the old house. Ayla sang as she cooked, danced when no one was watching. Ray smiled more often, laughed louder, and felt whole again. They had come from 2 different worlds, both wounded, both alone, but they had found something rare, something many searched their whole lives for. Not just love, not just safety, but a future. And when Ayla stood beside him one morning, her hand resting gently on her belly, Ray looked at her and whispered, "Tomorrow is already more beautiful than I ever dreamed." She smiled through tears and said, "We made it together." And from that moment on, the stars no longer looked lonely. Because below them, on a small piece of land, a poor alien woman and a quiet human man had built a forever together.